The revelation hits me like a thunderbolt, a moment of clarity amidst the storm of gunfire and chaos. The words echo in my mind, a beacon of hope and fear in equal measure. Pregnant. The realization that Raina is carrying our child changes everything. Every protective instinct in me roars to life, an unyielding force that demands I ensure their safety at all costs. Go, Raina! My voice is a command. Get to safety for our child. Raina pulls me close, her eyes a storm of emotions. Fear, love, determination. For a fleeting moment, the world around us fades. The gunfire and chaos mere echoes against the closeness of our bond. Her lips meet mine in an intimate kiss. I'll wait for you. Be there, she says, the promise in her voice an unbreakable vow. I give her one final nod and then turn to face the oncoming cultists. With this newfound resolve, I rise, my weapon in hand, my movements fueled by a desire to see my child, to hold Raina in my arms again. As I lay down a withering cover fire, my focus narrows to the task at hand. Each shot is a calculated effort to buy Raina time, to carve a path of survival for her. The cultists, undeterred by their fallen comrades, press on with a fervor that's chilling in its intensity. As I turn to make my escape, following in Raina's wake, a sharp pain explodes across my back. A bullet, one of the countless flying through the chaos, finds its mark. The force of the impact against my Kevlar vest is staggering, like a sledgehammer to my spine. The porcelain plate embedded underneath shatters, its fragments stabbing into my skin like 1,000 needles. I stumble forward, the world tilting dangerously. I hit the ground hard, the air rushing out of my lungs. Pain radiates across my back, a reminder of how close I came to a fatal shot. For a moment I lie there, dazed, the sounds of the battle a distant echo in my ears. I struggle to reach for my weapon, my fingers scraping the cold floor of the ship, but a boot comes crashing down on my hand with brutal force. A sharp, excruciating pain shoots through my arm, the unmistakable sensation of bones breaking. I stifle a scream, gritting my teeth against the agony. The cultist, his face twisted in a cruel sneer, towers over me. His gun is pointed at my head, his finger itching on the trigger. In his eyes, I see the end cold, merciless final. As I brace myself for the end, images of Raina and the life we could have had together flood my mind. But the expected gunshot never comes. Instead, there's a sharp command, a voice cutting through the chaos with authority. Stop! Lockhart strides into view, her presence commanding even amidst the bedlam. She pushes the cultist aside with a dismissive gesture, her eyes fixed on me. She reaches down, her fingers grasping the edge of my balaclava, and pulls it off with a swift motion. The recognition in her eyes is immediate, a flicker of shock quickly veiled by her composed facade. You, she says, her voice a low hiss. You were in Uptown, she murmurs. The couple with the scarf. Her voice is a mix of disbelief and an emotion I can't quite place. Regret? I look up at her, pain and defiance mixing in my gaze. Don't look so surprised, I spit out through gritted teeth, the effort sending waves of pain through my broken hand. She crouches beside me, her expression complex, a war of emotions playing out in the depths of her icy blue eyes. Her gaze softens, an unexpected vulnerability flashing across her face. You've made a grave mistake coming here, she says, her voice tinged with a hint of sorrow. Gasping for breath, I muster the strength to respond, my voice laced with bitterness. The only mistake was underestimating how far you'd go for this madness. Lockhart's eyes narrow, assessing me, weighing her options. Who are you? She demands, her voice steel-wrapped in silk. Before I can answer, a new voice joins the conversation. He's my brother-in-law, or was, at least. The tone is unmistakable. It's Juan. Juan steps into the dim light of the chamber, his figure draped in a heavy cloak that seems to absorb the scant light around him. As he moves closer, his presence is both familiar and utterly foreign, a man I once knew transformed by the path he's chosen. The cloak sways with his movements, and for a brief moment, I catch a glimpse of something beneath it. A glimpse of inhuman, shifting patterns that dance across his skin, dark and ominous, as if alive. Juan approaches me with a chilling smile, his eyes glinting with malevolence. He reaches down, his fingers deftly finding the C4 charge I had strapped to the Void Whisperer. His movements are precise, those of a man who knows exactly what he's doing. "Chirene oi," he calls out, his words dripping with a malicious glee. "I know you can hear me. You have the detonator, don't you? Go on, sister, press it. End this. End me." His taunt is a vile serpent, slithering through the air, reaching out to where I know Reyna is hiding, listening. There's a venomous certainty in his tone, a confidence that knows its target too well. "But you won't, will you?" he continues, a cruel laugh punctuating his words. "Because doing so would mean killing your beloved Ash, and we both know you don't have the heart for that." The chamber is silent, a tense pause hanging in the air. I can almost feel Reyna's turmoil, her desperation and rage a palpable force. It's a twisted game, a cruel manipulation of her love for me. With a few swift motions, Juan disconnects the wires of the charge, his fingers moving with a sinister grace. He holds the explosive up, examining it with a perverse curiosity. As he does, something chilling happens. The dark, inhuman patterns that I glimpsed beneath his cloak begin to writhe and pulse, creeping out like tendrils of shadow. The patterns extend down his arms, reaching his hands. They encircle the C4, and in a moment that feels both terrifying and mesmerizing, the dark force consumes the explosive. It's not just a simple destruction, it's an absorption, a controlled implosion that defies the laws of physics. The plastic explosive disintegrates, collapsing into itself in a spectacular display of dark energy, leaving no trace behind. He turns his attention now fully on me. "You and Reyna, always playing the heroes, but this is beyond your comprehension, beyond your petty sense of justice." "Come out," he calls, his words echoing off the metal walls. "Come and join your husband. Witness the birth of a new age, the awakening of Lua Den." My voice cuts through the tension, a desperate plea. "Don't listen to him. Get out of here now." Juan's demeanor shifts as he turns to Lockhart, his expression darkening with an unspoken command. He hands her a syringe filled with the same alien luminescent fluid we witnessed at the factory. Its glow is unsettling, casting eerie shadows across his face. "You know what to do," he says, his voice cold and devoid of any emotion. Lockhart hesitates, her hand trembling as she takes the syringe. Her eyes meet mine, and in that brief moment, I see a flicker of doubt, a hint of the same fear that I've seen in Kira's eyes. It's a look that speaks of being trapped in a situation far beyond her control, a submissive fear that belies her earlier authority and composure. "Last chance to save Ash. Be the heroine you always longed to be," he says mockingly. After a tense, unbearable silence, Reyna emerges from the shadows, her presence like a sudden flare in the darkness. Her hands are raised in surrender, a look of cold fury etched across her face. "You're a sick bastard, Juan," she spits out, her voice echoing through the chamber. The cultists quickly surround her, their hands rough as they disarm her and push her to the ground near me. "Reyna!" I shout, struggling against the cultist who's holding me down. My protest is met with a sharp blow to the back, forcing me to the cold metal floor. Juan watches the scene with a twisted satisfaction, his eyes gleaming in the dim light. "Bravery and love, such quaint concepts," he mocks. "But you lack the fortitude to do what is necessary, the willingness to give up everything, to sacrifice all for a higher purpose." Juan's eyes, dark and haunted, fix on me as I confront him. "Why, Juan? Why are you doing this?" I ask, seeking some semblance of reason in his madness. He pauses, the chaos around us fading into a mere backdrop. His gaze turns inward, reflecting on memories long buried, and he begins to speak. His voice is a whisper, yet it carries the weight of a lifetime of pain. "I was 6 years old," he starts, his eyes distant, lost in the past. "A boat person, adrift on the South China Sea. My family. They were all with me. We were escaping, hoping for a new life. His words are heavy, each one laden with a burden I can barely comprehend. His voice becomes a hypnotic cadence, and as he speaks, the very air around us seems to shift, the walls of the ship melting away into the darkness of a moonless night on the open sea. Raina and I find ourselves no longer in the chamber of the Nightingale, but on a small, crowded boat, adrift in a vast, uncaring ocean. The transition is seamless, an unsettling blurring of reality and memory. The cries and prayers of desperate refugees fill the air, their faces etched with fear and hope. Among them, a young Juan huddles with his family, their faces illuminated by the faint light of a single lantern. The scene is one of haunting despair, a tableau of human suffering. "But we never made it," he continues, his voice cracking. "Pirates. They came in the night like demons. They killed everyone. My parents, brothers, my sisters. I watched them all die." The pain in his voice is raw, a wound that never healed. The horrific scene unfolds before us, the memories manifesting like ghosts in the dim light. The terror in the eyes of his family, the cruelty of the attackers, it's all painfully vivid, as if we're living through it with him. The young Juan's helpless screams, his desperation, it resonates in the air, a haunting echo of a past that scarred him deeply. Juan's eyes, now brimming with tears, meet mine. But then, amidst the horror, something miraculous happened. The black flame emerged from the sea. It was like nothing I had ever seen, a darkness that burned, a shadow that consumed. The memory before us shifts, transforming into a nightmarish vision. The sea, once dark and indifferent, now roils with an unnatural force. From its depths, a black flame erupts, engulfing the pirates in its eldritch blaze. Their screams are drowned out by the sound of the sea itself recoiling from the dark fire. Juan, a child among this chaos, watches in a mixture of terror and awe as the flame devours his attackers, leaving nothing but void where they once stood. The black fire dances around him, a protective barrier between him and certain death. "I was alone, adrift," Juan continues, his voice a haunted echo. "But the black flame, it surrounded me, protected me. It was warm, comforting in a way that defied its terrifying appearance. It spoke to me, not in words, but in visions, feelings. It showed me a world beyond our understanding, a realm of infinite possibilities." The scene around us shifts again, morphing back to the chamber of the Nightingale. But now, there's an ethereal quality to everything, as if we're caught between two worlds, the tangible and the spectral. His gaze turns to the Void Whisperer, the monstrous device now pulsating with a sinister light. Lua Den revealed my purpose, to be his harbinger, to bring him forth into this world. All my life, every action, every decision, has been to fulfill that purpose. He pauses, his eyes locking onto mine. "The black fire will cleanse this world, burn away the corruption, the lies, the pain, and from its ashes, a new order will rise." Reina, her eyes burning with horror, interrupts him. "You're insane, Juan. You're talking about destruction, about the end of everything we know." Juan turns to her, his expression one of pity. "No, Reina, I'm talking about salvation. Do you even care about your own children? About what happens to them in this new world you're so eager to create?" My voice is raw, a mix of anger and disbelief. Juan's expression hardens, the mask of the loving father long since discarded. "My children," he begins, his voice a chilling monotone, "were necessary. Distractions. A means to placate Kira while we work towards our ultimate goal." Reina's face is a picture of shock and revulsion. "You used your own family, Juan? For what? This madness?" Juan turns away, his attention on the Void Whisperer, as if our presence, our condemnation is of no consequence. "What I do for the greater good. The future, our new reality, will justify these sacrifices." His words send a chill down my spine, forcing me to question everything I thought I knew about him. Was the man I once called family always this corrupted? Had his soul been claimed by darkness long before we realized? Xuan's next order is like a cold hand gripping my heart. "Prepare them," he commands the cultists, gesturing towards Reyna and me. They will be the final offerings to Luoden. Their sacrifice will herald the new dawn. The cultists move in, their faces obscured by hoods, their eyes gleaming with a zealot's fervor. They grab Reyna and me roughly, shackling us, and dragging us away from the Void Whisperer, towards a dark corner of the chamber. The room seems to contract, the shadows stretching and distorting as we're pulled deeper into the heart of the Nightingale. They strip us of our gear, our weapons and tools clattering to the floor, discarded and forgotten. They smear our faces and arms with dark, viscous paint, forming intricate symbols and patterns. These symbols are foreign, yet they emanate a sense of ancient power, a connection to something dark and primal. The paint is cold against my skin, and its scent is a strange mix of earth and something unnaturally metallic. As part of the ritual, they draw our blood, using sharp ceremonial daggers that gleam under the dim light. The cuts are shallow, more symbolic than harmful, our blood mingling with the dark paint. Finally, they push us towards a holding pen, a small enclosed space off to the side of the chamber. The door of the pen creaks open, revealing a space that reeks of death and despair. The walls are lined with scratches, the desperate marks of those who came before us. Stains, dark and ominous, mar the floor, each one a silent testament to a life violently ended. Inside, the evidence of previous victims is grisly. Tattered clothes, broken glasses, personal items that once held meaning to someone now gone. In the corner lies a small, tattered doll, its one remaining eye staring blankly. Reyna and I are shoved inside, the door slamming shut with a finality that echoes in the hollow space. We're left in near darkness, the only light a faint glow seeping in from the chamber beyond. We huddle together, our backs against the cold metal wall, listening to the sounds of the ritual growing louder, more frenetic. There's a sense of something impending, a crescendo building towards a climax that promises to be as terrifying as it is inevitable. I turn to her, her face barely visible in the dim light, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Rain, you had the detonator. Why didn't you press it? You could have stopped all this." Reyna's breath catches, a sob trapped in her throat. "I couldn't do it, Ash. I couldn't risk losing you, our baby. I couldn't bear the thought of our child growing up without a father." Her words pierce my heart, a mix of love and despair flooding through me. But now we're here, trapped, and that thing out there. My voice trails off, the weight of our situation settling heavy on my chest. Reyna reaches for my hand, her grip tight. "I know," she says, her voice breaking. "But I couldn't. I just couldn't. I love you, Ash. I couldn't let you die." Her confession is a balm and a blade, soothing yet cutting deep. "I love you too, Reyna," I reply, my voice thick with emotion. "No matter what happens, remember that." Suddenly, the sound of the heavy metal door creaking open pierces the stillness, jolting us into alertness. Our hearts race, every muscle tensing in anticipation of what horror might be about to unfold. I position myself protectively in front of Reyna, bracing for whatever comes through that door. But it's not a hooded cultist or a zealot that steps into the dim light of our cell. It's Lockhart, her face a mosaic of conflicted emotions. Instead of malice or contempt, there's a hint of urgency, a flicker of something that resembles remorse. In her hand, she holds a key, its metallic glint catching the faint light. Without a word, she strides over to us. She kneels down, her eyes avoiding ours as she unlocks the shackles binding our wrists. The sound of the metal clinking against the floor is loud in the silence of the cell. "Why?" I ask, my voice a mix of suspicion and confusion. Lockhart finally looks up, meeting our gaze. "I can't let this happen," she whispers, her voice barely audible over the din of the ritual outside. "I can't let him do this." She looks down, the weight of her guilt palpable in the slumped set of her shoulders. I was blinded, she admits. Blinded by the promise of knowledge, of power beyond our understanding. But this isn't what I signed up for. The destruction, the sacrifices, it's too much. Reyna shifts beside me, her gaze wary but curious. What are you saying? I was one of the engineers who designed the Void Whisperer, she reveals, her voice tinged with a hint of pride. I know its weaknesses, its critical points. I can tell you how to destroy it, she reveals. Reyna and I exchange a quick glance, understanding the gravity of her confession. How? I ask, urgency lacing my voice. Lockhart pulls out a small, crumpled piece of paper from her pocket and unfolds it, revealing a detailed sketch of the Void Whisperer. She points to a series of nodes and conduits, her finger tracing a path through the labyrinthine design. These are the power cores, she explains. They fuel the entire device. Destroy these, and the Whisperer will implode. How do we do that? Reyna interjects, her eyes scanning the complex schematic. We can't just walk in there and start shooting. Lockhart's gaze is steady, her mind working through the problem. There's a failsafe, she says, almost reluctantly. A sequence that can trigger a self-destruct mechanism. So why don't you just trigger it yourself? Reyna asks skeptically. Lockhart shakes her head, a shadow of fear crossing her face. I can't do it alone, she admits. The mechanism requires a two-part activation, one from within the system's core and the other from the main control panel. Juan made sure of it, to prevent any single person from sabotaging the Whisperer. Her eyes shift to us, a newfound determination replacing the fear. But you're being prepared for sacrifice. You'll be brought to the core. That puts you in the perfect position to initiate the self-destruct sequence from inside. But how will we reach the control panel? I ask, aware of the multitude of cultists that would be swarming the area. I can create a distraction, she says. Something big enough to draw their attention away from the control panel, but it won't last long. You'll have a small window to act. Lockhart reaches into her jacket, pulling out something unexpected. My phone. She hands it back to me with a slight nod. I made some modifications to it, she says. Useful ones. Hey, it actually still got bars, I quip sarcastically. She gives a half smile. More than that, she explains. It's not just a phone now. It's the key to the Whisperer's destruction. Reyna and I exchange a look of cautious hope. What do you mean key? I ask, curiosity piqued despite the dire circumstances. Lockhart explains quickly, efficiently. I installed a program, a backdoor into the Whisperer's control system. I've linked it to your phone. When you're in the core, you'll see a unique interface on the screen. It's designed to interact with the Whisperer's system directly. You'll need to enter the activation sequence for the self-destruct mechanism there. I hold the phone, feeling its familiar weight, now imbued with a new sense of purpose. And the sequence? How will we know it? She hands me a small piece of paper with a series of numbers and symbols. Memorize this. It's the code you'll need. Reyna takes the paper, studying it intently. Her words hang in the air, thick with a sincerity that I hadn't expected. Why should we trust you? I ask. You're part of this insanity. Lockhart's face hardens, a resolve shining in her eyes. You don't have to trust me, she replies, her voice steady. But if the Void Whisperer activates, there's no stopping what comes next. Lua Den will be unleashed, and everything we know, everything we are, will be consumed. She reaches into the folds of her cloak and pulls out a metal object. My Beretta, the one I thought I'd lost in the fray. She hands it to me, the weight of the firearm familiar and reassuring in my grip. You'll need this, she says, her eyes meeting mine. For what's to come. The cell is a pressure cooker of tension and uncertainty as Reyna and I prepare for the next phase of our desperate plan. I slide the Beretta into the back of my waistband, concealing it beneath the loose fabric of my shirt. The metal feels cold against my skin. We quickly assume our positions, feigning restraint as we await the arrival of the cultists. The sound of heavy boots approaching signals our moment of reckoning. The door swings open, revealing a group of cultists, their faces obscured by hoods, their eyes burning with fanatic fervor. They bark orders, gesturing for us to stand. I feign compliance, subtly checking that the shackles are loose enough to slip off at a moment's notice, yet tight enough to appear secure. Reyna catches my eye, giving a slight nod to indicate she's ready. We arrive at a parapet overlooking the heart of the Void Whisperer. The view is staggering, a chasm within the ship that defies the laws of physics and reason. The power core of the Whisperer is a maelstrom of energy, a swirling vortex of luminescent essence that seems to scream in silent agony. It's a haunting sight, the captured souls of countless victims, their life force siphoned to fuel the summoning of Luaden. The cultists force us to the edge of the parapet, the drop below a dizzying void that leads directly to the core. The energy emanating from the core is palpable, a sickening wave of power that tugs at the very essence of my being. Lockhart approaches Juan, who stands at the edge of the parapet, his gaze fixed on the vortex with a look of rapturous delight. "The portal is stabilizing," she reports, her voice betraying a hint of reluctance. Juan's reaction is immediate and intense. His eyes light up with a fervor that borders on unhinged. "Excellent," he exclaims, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. He grabs her firmly, pulling her into a kiss that is more a display of power than affection. Lockhart's response is subdued, a reluctant participation that speaks volumes of their twisted relationship, a glimpse into the warped dynamics at play. As he breaks the kiss, Juan's gaze remains fixed on Lockhart, his voice laced with a possessive tone. "Take your place, Natalie," he commands, his words not a request but an order. Lockhart's eyes flicker with a hint of defiance, but she complies, moving to stand by the control panel on the far side of the Void Whisperer, a pawn in Juan's grand scheme. As Juan's attention shifts towards the unfolding ritual, I spot the control panel near the power core. It's our target for initiating the self-destruct sequence that Lockhart described. The panel, a complex array of buttons and screens, pulsates with the same eerie light as the core, a heart of darkness that we must stop at all costs. True to her word, Lockhart, stationed at the main control panel, initiates a devastating sequence of events. The distant power conduits begin to overload, creating a spectacle of sparks and energy that erupts violently. A cultist, too close to one of the conduits, is caught in the explosion, disintegrating instantly. The horrifying event captures the attention of the surrounding cultists, drawing their eyes and bodies away from us, leaving only two to guard us. The explosion serves as our cue. In one fluid motion, I slip out of the loosely fastened shackles and launch myself at the nearest guard. His surprise is evident, but I waste no time. With a quick, practiced move, I disarm him, wrenching the gun from his grasp. In the same motion, I pivot, turning the guard towards his companion to use as a human shield. The response from the other cultist is immediate. Gunfire erupts, the sound deafening in the confined space. I can feel the impact of the bullets as they strike his comrade's body. Each hit a jarring reminder of how little the cultists value life. The guard's body jerks with each impact, a morbid puppet in my hands. I pull the trigger of my Beretta, the bullet finding its mark with lethal efficiency. The cultist's head snaps back, a spray of blood painting the metallic wall behind him. He crumples to the ground, lifeless. Reyna, seizing the moment of chaos, sprints towards the control panel near the core, clutching the modified phone. She reaches the panel and begins the intricate process of initiating the self-destruct sequence, her fingers flying over the phone's interface. Meanwhile, Juan's attention snaps towards me. His eyes blaze with an inhuman fire, the dark patterns on his skin now writhing like living shadows. He moves with a speed that's unnatural, closing the distance between us in the blink of an eye. His hands, now imbued with an otherworldly force, grasp my throat before I have time to react, lifting me effortlessly off the ground. The strength in his grip is overwhelming, his fingers like iron bands squeezing the life from me. My feet dangle, kicking futilely as I gasp for air. The world begins to blur at the edges, dark spots dancing in my vision. His inhuman strength threatens to crush my windpipe. I can barely see, my vision narrowing to a tunnel of fading light. Raina finishes entering the sequence into the phone with frantic urgency, her eyes flickering between the screen and the struggle unfolding between Juan and me. The moment she presses the final button, she launches herself into the fray. With a burst of adrenaline-fueled determination, she lunges at Juan from behind. She uses the chain of her shackles as an improvised weapon, looping it around his neck in a desperate attempt to strangle him. Her actions catch Juan off guard, his grip loosening on me as he grapples with the unexpected assault. I drop to the ground, coughing and gasping for air, my throat aching. Raina pulls the chain tight, using all her strength to constrict Juan's movements. For a moment, it seems she might overpower him, her leverage and surprise giving her a fleeting advantage. But Juan's inhuman strength quickly turns the tables. With a growl of rage, he reaches back, grabbing Raina by the hair. With a savage jerk, he throws her against the bulkhead of the ship. She hits the metal wall with a sickening thud, her body crumpling to the ground in a heap. Dazed but still conscious, she struggles to rise, her eyes blurry with pain. Juan, his face twisted with a fury that seems barely human, turns his attention back to me. He picks me up by the shoulder, his grip like steel. The power coursing through him makes him seem more monster than man. He holds me over the edge of the parapet, the void below a gaping maw waiting to swallow me whole. I am ushering in a new era, one where righteousness will reign, and those who stand in the way. His words trail off as he dangles precariously me over the parapet. In that split second, as the abyss below beckons, my eyes catch sight of Lockhart across the chamber. She meets my gaze, giving a subtle nod. She's done it, completed her part in initiating the self-destruct sequence. I look back at Juan, a sardonic smile playing on my lips despite the imminent danger. You know, Juan, I say, my voice steady even as I dangle over the edge. For someone who claims to be a visionary, you're really short-sighted. His expression falters, confusion momentarily replacing his rage. The chamber suddenly shakes wildly, a deep rumbling that emanates from the core of the ship. Alarms blare, red lights flashing, signaling the imminent destruction of the Void Whisperer. The realization of what's happening dawns on Juan's twisted face. In a fit of rage and panic, he releases his grip on me, dropping me towards the vortex below. I feel the stomach-churning sensation of freefall as I plummet towards the chasm below. But instinct and survival kick in. Desperately, I flail, reaching out for anything to halt my descent. My fingers find the edge of the parapet, the cold metal biting into my skin as I cling for dear life. My aching muscles and broken fingers scream in protest, the weight of my body pulling me towards the inevitable drop. As I struggle to pull myself up, my strength waning, I hear the sound of footsteps. It's Raina, bruised and battered but not beaten. She reaches the edge, her hands grasping mine in a firm, unyielding grip. "Jetai, Sherry! I've got you, babe!" she shouts over the cacophony of alarms and the rumbling ship. With a Herculean effort, she pulls, her strength amplified by adrenaline and sheer will. Inch by inch, she helps pull me back from the edge of death, until I'm finally safe, lying on the parapet beside her. The Void Whisperer, its core destabilized by our actions, becomes a maelstrom of chaos. The vortex below our feet turns violently unstable, erupting with streams of plasma that scythe through the bulkheads like they're made of paper. The raw energy cuts a swath of destruction through the chamber, disintegrating cultists caught in its wrathful path. Raina and I scramble to our feet, staggering under the ship's convulsions. As we race across the ship, the nightingale is coming apart around us. The screams of the cultists mix with the groaning of tortured metal. Turning a corner, we see Lockhart, her body huddled in a corner, her eyes wide with fear. Looming over her is Juan, his face contorted with a murderous rage, the dark patterns on his skin pulsating with a sinister energy. Raina follows my gaze and sees the scene unfolding. We share a moment of unspoken understanding. Despite everything, we can't let Lockhart die, not like this. She saved us, and now it's our turn to return the favor. Juan, his fury palpable, raises his hand, dark energy crackling at his fingertips, ready to strike down Lockhart. Juan! I yell, my voice cutting through the chaos. Que lai vanin vau suchet. Turn around and look upon your death, I say coldly. His head snaps towards the sound, his eyes burning with a black flame. He abandons Lockhart for the time being, who lies trembling on the ground, and turns his full wrath on Reyna and me. As he advances, I raise my pistol, firing shot after shot. Each bullet strikes him, but they seem to only slow him down, not stop him. His body absorbs the impact, the dark patterns on his skin shimmering with each hit. I continue firing, backing away as Juan advances with relentless, terrifying purpose. The magazine empties, the final click of the hammer echoing in the chamber. He's just feet away now, his face twisted in a grotesque mask of anger and madness. In that moment of desperation, as he reaches out to strike, a stray beam of plasma, unleashed from the collapsing Whisperer, arcs across the chamber. The beam, a searing line of pure destructive energy, slices through Juan's body. He looks down in disbelief as his body is literally cleaved in half, the two sections falling away in opposite directions. The dark patterns on his skin flicker and fade as his life force is extinguished. Lockhart, still in the corner, watches in shock as Juan's body hits the floor. The stream of plasma that cut down Juan also tore a gaping chasm between us and Lockhart. We have to act fast. I glance around, spotting an escape ladder barely hanging off the side of the ship. With a nod to Reyna, we both rush towards it, our movements quick despite our exhaustion. We work together, dislodging the ladder with a few strong tugs. It's heavy, but adrenaline lends us strength. We lay it across the chasm, creating a makeshift bridge for Lockhart to crawl over. The ladder creaks under its own weight, a perilous path, but it's our only option. Come on, Lockhart! I shout over the din of the collapsing ship. You can make it! She looks terrified, her eyes darting between the ladder and the fissure below. I can't, she stammers, her voice barely audible. I can't do it. Reyna, standing firm on the other side, extends her hand. You have to, Natalie, she yells. It's now or never! I can see the conflict raging within Lockhart, the fear of the crossing warring with the fear of what lies behind her. You can do this. We believe in you, I say, trying to sound as reassuring as possible. Slowly, almost reluctantly, she crawls onto the ladder. Each movement is tentative, her hands gripping the rungs tightly. The ladder sways slightly, groaning under her weight. Hold on, just a little further, I encourage, my hand stretched out towards her. Lockhart's progress is agonizingly slow, but she keeps moving, driven by a survival instinct that overrides her fear. Finally, she reaches our side, collapsing into my arms, gasping for breath. Reyna and I don't waste a second. We pull her to her feet, supporting her as we continue our desperate race through the disintegrating riverboat. The Nightingale is a labyrinth of chaos, but we push forward, driven by the need to survive, to see the light of day once more. As we navigate the twisting corridors, the ship lurches suddenly, throwing us against the walls. We cling to each other, steadying ourselves as best as we can. The sound of the ship tearing itself apart is deafening, a cacophony of destruction that threatens to overwhelm us. Surviving cultists scatter in all directions, some in a blind panic, others seemingly entranced, embracing the cataclysm with open arms, as if it were the divine rapture they had been promised. We reach the deck, the night air a welcome relief against our faces. The Mississippi River, once a serene backdrop, is now a turbulent escape route. We can see our small boat, still miraculously intact, bobbing in the water a short distance away. With one last burst of energy, we sprint towards the edge of the ship. The jump is dangerous, the gap between the ship and the boat wider than I'd like, but we have no choice. We leap, one after the other, our bodies propelled by desperation. Rain and I hit the water hard, the impact knocking the wind out of us. But we keep moving, swimming towards our boat with frantic strokes. Lockhart follows, her movements less confident but driven by the same urgency. We haul ourselves into the boat, exhausted but alive. I start the engine, steering us away from the Nightingale as fast as I can. As I throttle the engine, pushing our small boat to its limits, the Nightingale, once a majestic and ominous vessel, now convulses in its death throes. The river around it churns chaotically, reflecting the chaos that consumes the ship. Raina, Lockhart, and I watch in stunned silence as the Nightingale begins to implode. The sounds of rending metal and explosive decompressions create a terrifying symphony. The ship, a massive structure of steel and darkened tensions, crumples in upon itself like a house of cards caught in a gale. Its once formidable silhouette collapses, the Void Whisperer's unstable energy turning the vessel into a whirlpool of destruction. The night sky is illuminated by the eerie glow of the imploding ship, casting ghastly shadows on the water. The air vibrates with the force of the collapse, a palpable pressure that we can feel even from our distance. Flashes of otherworldly light and dark energy burst from the ship, like the final, desperate breaths of a dying beast. As the Nightingale disappears beneath the waves, a massive shockwave ripples across the river. Our boat rocks violently, struggling against the sudden surge in the water. I fight to keep control, my hands gripping the wheel tightly. In the aftermath, the river calms, returning to its natural state as if nothing had happened. We sit in silence as we navigate the tranquil waters of the Mississippi, the chaos of the Nightingale now just a memory etched into the night sky. Our boat hums softly, cutting through the water as we head back to shore. The first rays of dawn begin to touch the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. It's a reminder that even after the darkest night, the sun will rise. We dock at a secluded pier, far enough from the chaos we left behind and from prying eyes. The engine dies down to a gentle purr before falling silent. The only sound left is the soft lapping of the water against the boat. Lockhart stands up, her movements stiff and mechanical. She stands before us, her figure silhouetted against the rising sun. The intensity of the previous hours has etched lines of fatigue and regret on her face. She looks at Raina and me, her expression a complex mix of relief, sorrow, and an unspoken apology for her part in the night's horrors. I don't know how to thank you, she begins, her voice low and steady. You've changed the course of everything. I was a part of that death cult, but you still gave me a second chance. Raina, her arm around my waist, gives a small nod. We did what we had to do, she says simply. Her tone carries the weight of the night, the burden of choices made and lives irrevocably altered. As we stand there, the world slowly waking around us, Lockhart reaches into her pocket and pulls out a small slip of paper. She hands it to me. If you ever need anything at all, she says earnestly, don't hesitate to reach out. I owe you that much, and more. I take the paper, folding it carefully and tucking it away. Thank you, I say, but I hope we never have to see you again. She gives us a final nod, a silent farewell, before turning and walking away, her figure gradually disappearing into the morning mist. Raina and I stand in silence for a few more moments, watching the sun rise over the river. The world feels different now, altered by the night's events. We drive back to the cabin, the journey a quiet one. The world around us is awakening, oblivious to the darkness that nearly consumed it. As we near the cabin, a sense of relief washes over us. Before we even reach the door, Kira bursts out, her face etched with worry and hope. She sees us, and relief floods her features. She rushes over, enveloping both Raina and me in a tight embrace. Is it over? She asks, pulling back to look at us, her eyes searching ours for an answer. I nod, the fatigue in my voice unmistakable. It's over, I assure her. It's finally over. Her next question is hesitant, laden with a deep-seated dread. What happened to Juan? He's gone, Em, I say softly. He won't hurt anyone anymore. Kira's reaction is a mixture of sorrow and relief. Her eyes, brimming with tears, reflect the turmoil of losing someone she once loved. yet also the liberation from the shadow he had cast over her life. Just then, the sound of the cabin door creaking open breaks the moment. Kira's children appear, their faces brightening upon seeing us. "Cow Ash! Morena!" they exclaim, running towards us. Kira's hand finds mine, her grip tight with urgency. "Please, An," she pleads, her eyes imploring. "Don't tell them what really happened to their father. They shouldn't have to live with that." Kira's request echoes in my ears, a plea for decency for someone who doesn't deserve it. Her hand in mine is a tether to a reality that feels both distant and painfully immediate. I look into her eyes, seeing the depth of her pain and fear, the desperate hope for a shred of normalcy for her children. I look at Theo and Mia, their laughter, their unburdened smiles. They remind me of what we fought for, of the innocence that needs protection in this often cruel and unforgiving world. I exchange a brief look with Reyna, a silent agreement passing between us. They won't hear it from us, I assure her. They deserve to remember the good in him. The days following the harrowing events are a blur, a mix of exhaustion and a deep-seated sense of loss. The world continues to spin, seemingly indifferent to the profound changes that have taken place. After the funeral, a quiet, somber affair, I find myself standing in front of the family altar that's adorned with photos of our departed loved ones. There's a sense of peace here, a sacred space where memories linger and the past is honored. Among the photos of my grandparents, with their gentle smiles frozen in time, I place a new addition. It's a photo of Juan, but not as the man corrupted by the black flame. Instead, I choose a picture from his childhood, a snapshot of a time before the darkness took hold of him. In this photo, he's just a boy, innocent and unburdened by the weight of his future choices. With a deep breath, I light a joss stick, its fragrance immediately filling the room, a scent that's always been synonymous with remembrance and reverence in our family. The smoke curls upwards, a silent prayer, a hope for peace for those who have departed. I place the joss stick in the holder, watching as its glow flickers softly, casting a warm, somber light across the photos. Standing there, I reflect on the events that brought us to this moment, the journey of pain, betrayal, and ultimately, redemption. Stepping back into our home in the French Quarter feels like crossing into another world, one far removed from the chaos and darkness we've just escaped. The familiar creaks of the old wooden floorboards, the soft, diffused light filtering through the lace curtains. It all seems surreal, as if belonging to a life we lived long ago. I head to the bathroom, the intent to wash away the grime and memories of that night still clinging to me. The sound of the shower running greets me, and through the steam-clouded glass, I see Reyna's silhouette, her movements slow and weary under the cascade of water. "I'll wait until you're done," I call out. "No, come in," she insists, her voice barely audible above the sound of the water. "Please." Hesitating for just a moment, I shed my clothes, each piece a layer of the past few days that I'm eager to discard. As I step into the shower, the warm water envelops me, a soothing contrast to the tension that's been my constant companion. Reyna has her back turned to me, the water streaming down her chestnut-brown hair, tracing the contours of her body. She doesn't turn around, but I see her shoulders shake slightly, a silent sob escaping her. I move closer, wrapping my arms around her, my chest against her back. I can feel the subtle change in the curve of her body. There, beneath my hands, almost imperceptible but undeniably present, is the faint swell of her abdomen, the earliest hint of the new life we've created together. Reyna turns within my embrace, her eyes meeting mine. There's so much in those eyes, the same eyes that looked into the abyss and didn't falter. The warm water washes over us, mingling with the tears that flow freely from Reyna's eyes. Her body, pressed against mine, trembles with the weight of all we've endured. The water courses down our bodies, tracing the lines of our cuts and bruises, the physical reminders of the harrowing ordeal we've just survived. I feel the roughness of her skin where it's been grazed, the tender spots where bruises are forming. My own injuries, a patchwork of pain, resonate with hers. In this intimate space, the steam wraps around us like a cocoon, creating a world where only we exist. As we stand there, holding each other, the gravity of our situation becomes unavoidably clear. The life we lead, fraught with danger and uncertainty, is not conducive for raising a child. There's a new life growing, utterly reliant on our choices and actions. The thought of bringing a child into this world, our world, is terrifying. The risks we routinely take, the shadow of death that follows us, isn't something a child should grow up in. They shouldn't have to wonder each night whether mom and dad are coming home alive. Raina's voice, barely above a whisper, breaks the silence. "We can't keep doing this, Ash," she says. "We can't keep risking our lives, not when it's no longer just about us." I nod, feeling the truth of her words resonate deep within me. "I know," I reply, my voice thick with emotion. "I've been thinking the same thing. We've been lucky so far, but luck runs out." The decision to step away from our lives as private eyes, once unfathomable, now crystallizes into a firm resolution. Embracing this new chapter, Raina pursued and obtained her real estate license, showcasing her knack for understanding people and spaces in a more peaceful setting. I, on the other hand, leveraged my background and connections to become a security consultant, offering advice and strategies to those looking to protect themselves from the kinds of dangers we once faced head-on. As for Abby, our ever-reliable secretary and friend, we made sure she wasn't left behind in our transition to a safer life. We supported her decision to go back to college. We helped her navigate the application process and even secured a part-time job for her at a local law firm. Amidst these significant life changes, Rain and I were in for another surprise. We found out we were expecting twins. The news brought a mix of joy, excitement, and a touch of apprehension. On September 25th of this year, we welcomed our beautiful, healthy children into the world. A boy, Tristan Bao Tran, and a girl, Bridget Q Tran. Holding them for the first time, feeling their tiny hands clasp our fingers, was a profoundly life-changing moment. So anyways, it's been an incredibly humbling journey sharing this story. However, I hope y'all understand that as much as I've enjoyed writing this account, I hope I never get the opportunity to write another one.